or have another print disability which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hello, this is Michelle, and for the next hour I'll be reading from the May 10th issue of the Sunday Gusto from the Buffalo News and the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Cover story: Sizzling Cinema. Historic dramas, sequels, and blockbusters fill summer movie bill by Bruce Miller. Consider it the Oppenheimer effect. This summer's films have a historical bent that could be ideal for the country's 250th. If that isn't enough, look for the usual sequels, superheroes, and sci-fi flicks to fill the season. The big one to watch, Steven Spielberg's Disclosure Day, a super secretive close encounter with aliens. Here's a look at what's ahead. Now playing Animal Farm. George Orwell's allegory may go down better in animation. Seth Rogen, Woody Harrelson, and Glenn Close are among the voices. The Devil Wears Prada 2, a revisit to the Haunting magazine editor and her former minions, gets Meryl Streep back in Meryl Streep's mode. That's all. The Sheep Detectives. When a farmer, played by Hugh Jackman, winds up dead, the sheep he's ready to, you got that right, decide to find the culprit. Lots of big names beside voices. Billie Eilish, Hit Me Hard and Soft, the tour, live in 3D. It's a concert film, but it's Billie Eilish, so there's going to be a spin you didn't see coming. Mortal Kombat 2. There's more. Carl Urban returns in the video game turned movie. May 15th. In the Gray. Henry Cavill and Jake Gyllenhaal get involved in a Guy Ritchie adventure film about operatives working on a heist. Is God Is? Two sisters go on the hunt for the one who wronged them. Tony winner Carrie Young and Mallory Johnson star. Obsession. Using magic to make someone fall in love with you doesn't always work, or so Michael Johnson discovers in this horror film. The Wizard of the Kremlin. Judd Law plays Vladimir Putin in this thriller about his rise to power. May 22nd. I Love Boosters. Keke Palmer stars as the head of a group of shoplifters who get under the skin of folks like Demi Moore and Will Poulter. Boots Riley directs. The Mandalorian and Grogu. Pedro Pascal gets to bring his hit Star Wars character to the big screen. Along for the ride, his green sidekick. May 29th. The Breadwinner. Nate Bargatze tests his skills as Mr. Mom when his wife, played by Mandy Moore, goes away. The question, will Bargatze be another Adam Sandler? Back Rooms, a YouTube fave. Kane Parsons adapts his work into the story of people stuck in the back room of some mall-like place for the rest of their lives. Pressure. Brendan Fraser plays Dwight Eisenhower in this drama about the 72 hours before D-Day. June 12th. Stop That Train. RuPaul plays the president in this comedy about a runaway train. Lots of recognizable faces turn up. Disclosure Day. Since Steven Spielberg is the king of summer releases, this is bound to be a hit. It involves aliens, but that's as much as anyone will say. Emily Blunt, Josh O'Connor, and Coleman Domingo star. June 19th. Toy Story 5. Those determined toys face a new challenge. Screens. When kids turn to tablets, it's war. The Death of Robin Hood. Hugh Jackman plays Robin Hood in this dramatic take. Leviticus, a hit in the film fest circuit. This entry about conversion therapy shows how two boys try to break out. Girls Like Girls. Haley Kiyoko turns her song novel into a film about summer love. June 26th, Supergirl, Millie Alcock plays the young superhero as a counterculture crime fighter. Jackass Best and Last. The gang is back, but they say this is the last time. Honest? Lucky Strike. Continuing the World War II fascination. This stars Scott Eastwood, Colin Hanks, and Hanian Ellis Taylor in the aftermath of the Battle of the Bulge. The Invite. Olivia Wilde and Seth Rogen get involved in a relationship with neighbors Penelope Cruz and Ed Norton. Wide directs. July 1st, A Minions and Monsters. Those lovable minions try to make a monster movie in 1920s Hollywood, but encounter a new wrinkle sound. July 3rd, A Young Washington. Just in time for the country's 250th anniversary, we get this look at the first president before he makes moves. William Franklin Miller plays the role. July 10th, Mona. Dwayne Johnson returns as Maui in a live-action version of the Disney hit. Gail Doherty in the Celebrity Sex Pass. Before her wedding, a woman zips to Hollywood to use her pass as John Hamm. July 17th, The Odyssey. Christopher Nolan takes on Hornets epic with Matt Damon and a bunch of other big stars. July 24th, The Dink. Pickleball gets its due in this comedy from Ben Stiller. Evil Dead Burn. It's the 6th one. If you need to ask, you're not in the Evil Dead family. Rosebush Pruning. L.A. Fanning learns what quirks bend a healthy family in this satire. 72 Hours. Kevin Hart plays an older worker who joins his 20-something colleagues at a bachelor party. Hadestown, the musical. The British version of Broadway's hit gets a screen capture version. July 31st, Spider-Man Brand New Day. Tom Holland returns as the web slinger. Zendaya's here too. August 7th, One Night Only. Premarital sex is legal 1 night a year, so who hooks up? This is like The Purge. Super Troopers 3. The goofy Vermont troopers are back. August 14th, The End of the Street. In this, the summer of Anne Hathaway, she and Ewan McGregor play folks who are transported elsewhere. Paw Patrol, the Dino movie. Guess who's going to the dogs? The Brink of War. Jeff Daniels plays Ronald Reagan and Jared Harris plays Mikhail Gorbachev in this account of their Reykjavik summit. The Rivals of Eliza King. Matthew McConaughey stars as a honey producer who's threatened by outsiders. August 21st, Insidious Out of the Further. More mayhem. If you have to ask, you aren't in the sloop. Mutiny. Jason Statham must clear his name yet again. Spa Weekend. Friends go on a girls' weekend. Leslie Mann, Isla Fisher, and Anna Faris are in the mix. August 28th, Coyote versus Acme. Wile E. Coyote takes on the Acme Corporation. Idiots. Dave Franco and Shay Jackson Jr. take a kid to rehab in a road trip comedy. Legend of the White Dragon. After losing his title as the White Dragon, Eric Reed returns to clear his name and protect his family. The late Jason David Frank stars. The Dog stars. Jacob Elordi and Josh Brolin get to star in Ridley Scott's latest, a thriller about a flu that threatens to wipe out everyone. An Evening with Lily Rose. Music by Harry Skull Jr. Singer-songwriter Lily Rose brought her unique blend of country pop and hip-hop to the town ballroom on May 2nd as part of her I Know What I Want tour to support the debut of her first full-length album. A native of Atlanta, she received GLAAD's Outstanding Breakthrough Artist Award in 2022 and has toured with artists Sam Hunt and Luke Bryan. Pictures of Lily Rose with her guitar playing and the crowd cheering. Things to do. Butterfly Porch Fest, Butterfly Experience, and Seasonal Openings by Tony Roberto. Welcome to May, the month when attractions open, festivals return, and there's music in the air. Take Porch Fest, the neighborly gathering of music lovers as homeowners and businesses open their porches, driveways, and patios to local musicians and bands. Porch Fest season opens on May 16th with the original Buffalo Porch Fest that has been going since 2013, and it's big. You can find events from Allentown up along Elmwood Avenue to the Richardson Olmsted Complex at Forest Avenue and all the streets in between. The lineup will be online at elmwoodvillage.org right before the event to help you game plan. But if you don't have a particular band or venue you want to visit, find a place to park and start walking down and follow the music. Bring water for hydration and a chair if you want to perch for a while. Also bring money for donations to bands and to buy food and drink along the way. Future Porch Fests include Kenmore on June 28th, South Buffalo on July 11th, Parkside Community on July 18th, Village of Lancaster August 15th, North Tonawanda August 16th, and the City of Tonawanda on August 23rd. Registration for musicians to perform is generally open until a few weeks before the events on individual websites and Facebook pages. Butterfly Experience, May 16th to July 19th at the Buffalo or Erie County Botanical Gardens. A visit to the Botanical Gardens is always a warm and colorful time no matter what time of year you visit. But this annual treat is something special and extra colorful. The Butterfly Experience, held inside the Tropical Orchard, showcases the beauty of hundreds of butterflies native to the U.S. On average, you will see 10 to 15 different species of butterflies, including swallowtails, monarchs, painted ladies, and red admirals. All guests will be given a brief intro about the exhibit and rules before going into a vestibule used as a safety zone for the butterflies. From there you'll enter the 1,200 square foot space with the butterflies, tropical plants, and fruits and pathways. While you can't feed or touch the butterflies, they are quite delicate. You can take photos and selfies of the entire experience. Your ticket allows you to access to all the 12 greenhouses, so stay and explore as much as you would like. New this year is a live butterfly release held at 9 a.m. on select Fridays and Saturdays, where you'll get early access to the conservatory and watch the butterflies take flight while learning more about them. Each season is limited to 15 people and requires a special ticket. Dancing with the Stars, 4 p.m. today, Sunday, in Shays Buffalo Theater. How popular is Dancing with the Stars in Buffalo? This is the second time this year that the live production is visiting Shays. Among the pros expected to dance are Alan Burstyn, Brandon Armstrong, Britt Stewart, Daniela Karagic, Emma Slater, Ezra Sosa, Jenna Johnson, Pasha Paskov, Val Kamberkowski, and Haley Bills. This event's guest co-host is actress Elaine Hendricks. WWE presents NXT Live, 7:30 Friday at the Buffalo River Works, Skansen Street. This is the first time in 6 years that NXT Live is back in Buffalo. NXT is the arm of the WWE, where you can see up-and-coming stars in smaller local settings before they hit the big national stage. You'll see NXT champion Joe Hendry, North American champ Miles Bourne, women's champ Jacy Jayne, Women's North American champ Tatum Paxley, tag team champs The Vanity Project plus Ethan Page, Blake Monroe, and Jada Parker. The card is subject to change. Opening attractions. The slate of attractions now open for the season include this popular trio: Hidden Valley Animal Adventure, Royce Road, Marysburg. Take a guided bus tour or a self-guided tour to see a variety of animals, including camels, kangaroos, miniature horses, zebras, and donkeys. There's also a petting zoo. Open 10 to 5 weekends through June 28th, then open daily through Labor Day. Kelkenberg Farm, Walcott Road, Clarence Center. Pet the baby animals, play farm games, or take a train ride through the fields. Current hours are 10 to 2 Wednesday through Friday, 10 to 4 weekends. Special events are held throughout the season. Penn-Dixie Fossil Park and Nature Preserve, North Street, Blaisdell. Who doesn't like to play in the dirt? At the 54-acre Penn-Dixie Park, that's how you can find fossils dating back 380 million years. It's open 9 to 4:30 Saturday and Sunday to June 21st. Expanded hours will follow. Quick calendar. Drake Milligan with Jack Blocker, 8 p.m. Tuesday, Buffalo Ironworks. Silver Sun Pickups, 6:30 Tuesday, Town Ballroom. The Sheila Divine, 7 p.m. Thursday, Electric City. The Rush Experience, 7:30 Friday at the Wester Riviera Theater, North Tonawanda. Grosh Video Release Party for Don't Trust Nobody, 8 p.m. Friday with the Sportsman's Tavern. Brantley Gilbert, 8 p.m. Saturday, Seneca Niagara Resort and Casino. Shay's Free Film Series, a Minecraft movie, 1 p.m. next Sunday. Doors open at noon. Just announced. How to Be an Artist with Patrick Gallo and George Caldwood, 7 p.m. June 19 and 20 at the Kaz, Seneca Street. Theatrical event written and directed and starring Patrick Gallo with musical director by George Caldwell. Legacy in Motion, celebrating Miles Davis at 100 with the John Lear Dance Company and John Bacon and Star People. 7:30 July 17th, the Art Park Main Stage Theater, Lewiston. Erie County Fair Grandstand Concerts. These concerts are free with paid free admission. Marshall Karloff and Purple Experience Prince Tribute, August 12th. The Marshall Tucker Band, August 13th. And that Arena Rock Show, August 17th. Concerts are at 7:30. Pavlo and Band, 8 p.m. October 16th in Ashbury Hall, Babeville. Punch Brothers, 7:30 November 15th, University of Buffalo Center for the Arts, Main Stage Theater. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the May 10th issue of the Sunday Gusto from the Buffalo News. West Herd Riviera Theater just announced. Making their Riviera debut, a tribute to the Beatles, the Cavaliers, January 14th and 15th. On sale now. Rush, May 15th and 16th. The American Ride, tribute to Keith, May 22nd. Toby Keith tribute, May 22nd. Starry Starry Night, Dan McClellan, May 28th. Smells Like Verona, May 29th. Like Combs, May 30th. Tapestry, Carole King Songbook, June 5th. Awaken, The Music of Yes, June 6th. Beach Party Boys, June 12th. Linger, The Cranberries Tribute, June 13th. Burlesque, June 27th. Yellow Brick Road, tribute to Elton John, July 10th and 11th. Green Today, tribute to Green Day, July 18th. Montgomery Gentry, featuring Eddie Montgomery, August 6th. Furious, Hip Hop Legends, August 8th. Television. Primal Instincts. Netflix Lord of the Flies is the best TV show of the year by Kelly Lawler. Lord of the Flies is so much more than you remember. The classic 1954 William Golding novel has been a staple of high school English classes for decades, as one of the most formative works of literature in the 20th century, influencing everything from gender-bent homage Yellow Jackets on Showtime to reality TV like CBS's Survivor to Stephen King. But like so many works of art considered classics and used for pedagogy, Flies can seem like a relic of the past, a curiosity rather than a warning. But in 2026, our modern age, fueled by debates about boyhood in the manosphere, reminders of the precariousness of democracy, the brutality and pointlessness of war, and the very nature of human decorum, there's no wonder Flies is back and in living color. Now streaming on Netflix after an acclaimed run on the BBC in the UK, this year Lord of the Flies, 4 stars out of 4, is the best show of the year. Retelling a story that is desperately tenant and resonant in 2026, led by an astonishing talented cast of young actors and brought to life with painterly brushstrokes of vivid color and horrifying imagery. Flies is 4 episodes of captivating edge-of-your-seat horror, adapted by Jack Thorne, who explored similar themes in last year's word-of-the-mouth sensation Adolescent, as an absolute must-watch, as hard as that watching experience may be. Flies, you'll likely recall, it takes place on a tropical deserted island where a plane full of very young boys has crashed during a wartime evacuation. No adults survive the crash, and the children are left to organize and survive on their own, hoping for rescue. What starts as democratic, orderly, cooperative, and hopeful quickly devolves into something violent, tribal, primitive, and utterly wild. Ralph, played by Winston Sawyers, initially emerges as the boy's chief. Helped by wielding a symbolic conch shell, he blows like a horn to gather them all together and maintain order. He's helped by Piggy, played by David McKenna, the prototypical nerd with asthma and an unfortunate nickname, but one of the only boys thinking of the practicalities of their survival. Rivaling Ralph is Jack, played by Lox Pratt, a Draco Malfoy-looking rich kid with a chip on his shoulder and a desire only to show his prowess as a hunter and leader of fun and chaos. Living in Jack's shadow is timid Simon, played by Ike Talbert, who's easily bullied and unable to resist Jack's thrall and authority. The 4 lead the group of terrified and tiny boys, some who look as young as 4 or 5. Every second of Flies is a meticulously thought-out moment of wonder and horror in equal measure. The stunning shots of the island scenery, wrought in deep gem tones and harsh bright light, contrast with the dark gray and inscrutable palette of every other serious show on TV right now. Director Mark Munden does not want you to miss a single thing that happens on screen. The setting is a place of deep, almost painful beauty that will bear witness to the unspeakable horrors of humanity, writ large by a group of once innocent boys who are stand-ins for the depravity of the rest of us. The adaptation is extremely faithful to the original movie, with a few liberties taken here and there to dig further into the psyches of the boys. Each character is drawn with nuance and care, and the actors are wise beyond their years. even as their very youth hammers home the story's themes in a more visceral way than the written word could. So much of the modern TV is fast, clumsy, and overly expository, catered for viewers too distracted by their phone to pay attention. Flies demands that attention and will leave you behind if you aren't all in. It is slow, almost achingly slow, to a point where you cannot tear your eyes away from the haunting images. It's deathly silent in many scenes, a quiet horror that creeps up as the boys lose their grip on polite society and descend into barbarity. We are so sucked in as to be complicit in the baseness of human nature that all leads to violence and to brevity. We are Ralph and Jack and Simon and Piggy. We are weak and base, and we are hopeless. Books. Intimate Audrey comes from One Who Knew Hepburn Best by Carol Ann Davidson. The lithe and lovely Audrey Hepburn consumed one piece of chocolate every afternoon, a lifelong bittersweet habit she formed at the end of World War II. After suffering severe deprivation and malnutrition endured as a child in the heavily bombarded Arnhem, Netherlands, an Allied soldier gifted her bars of chocolate. You can only imagine the impact that gesture had on the 15-year-old girl who had subsisted on a watery broth of flour and tulip bulbs. Kindness and gratitude became pillars of her character. In the recently published book about his famous mother, Intimate Audrey, Sean Hepburn Farrar and co-writer Wendy Holden trace her life from those dire years through the trajectory to her Oscar at age 24. Her starring roles in 16 films and as the tireless UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador for underprivileged children worldwide, her last and perhaps greatest role. Untold personal stories intermixed with exclusive photos delve deeply into the life of this extraordinary woman. Sean shares that Audrey had a truly gentle heart. She just wanted to love and be loved. The best kept secret about Audrey Hepburn is that alongside the sweetness of her, there was a great deal of sadness. She was only 6 years old when her father abandoned her and her mother, a deep scar that never healed. The loves of her life, her sons, Sean and Luca Dotti, and her final partner, Robbie Waters, saved her from heartbreak after the despair of several miscarriages and 2 divorces. It's difficult to believe that the luminous ethereal star, who gave millions of her devoted fans so much joy, could ever have been burdened by self-doubt and deep insecurities, but she was. She was her own worst critic, although her mother's constant criticism didn't help. It's because of a strange mix of strength and vulnerability, Sean remarks, that she was so beloved in her films and life. This definitive biography discloses the innumerable times that her inner strength and intelligence triumphed over her perceived flaws. When the song Moon River was to be cut from the film Breakfast at Tiffany, Audrey, in an uncharacteristic outburst of rage, pronounced, "Over my dead body." Henry Mancini's song survived the cut. With her beauty and elegance, she became a timeless beacon of style, says Sean. Never she or I imagined how ambiguous her image would become on everything from t-shirts to artwork, coffee mugs, to style features in magazines. In 1978, while I was waiting to interview Hubert Givenchy in his atelier in Paris for a documentary on fashion I was creating, Audrey suddenly appeared. In shock and in awe, I blurted out, "I loved you in Two for the Dead, Two for the Road." She smiled that glorious smile of hers, but said nothing as she moved to another room, where I suspect she and Givenchy conferred over her clothes, as that magical professional marriage had done for years, this time for the film Bloodline. The next day I was invited to the restaurant Maximus, where a scene from the film was being shot. Besides her exceptional acting, I noticed that she naturally bonded with the director and crew, who obviously adored her. she was no prima donna. In 1973, I had interviewed Oscar-winning costume designer Edith Head. She told me that Audrey enjoys designing clothes for the little Audreys that our outstaff used to give her to work on. Those little Audreys were maquettes dressed on the exact clothes that Audrey would wear for her films. I played with those dolls in 2002 during magical days spent with Sean's godson, Pierluigi Orthrenzo, in his hometown of Moors, Switzerland. We visited their private foundation in homage to Audrey's multiple artistic talents, sketches and paintings of children and flowers, drawings of clothing she designed, innumerable posters of her films, and her personality in annotated film scripts. Shelves stacked with archival material, a doll dressed in the stunning white gown she wore, My Fair Lady, that stood on Audrey's green canvas director's chair. Onessa and I then drove to the nearby village of Tuhunu, where Audrey had lived at her beloved La Plaza for 30 years, and to a nearby cemetery where she was buried at age 63. Paying my respects at her gravesite at a small cemetery overlooking Vernon Fields near her home, I was struck by its lovingly cared for simplicity. Under the pretty little cherry tree that Sean describes lies a simple white stone cross, roses that she coveted, and at the foot of Audrey's grave a graceful stone angel bent in prayer. In her last film, Always, directed by Steven Spielberg, she played an angel, a most fitted swan song. As intimate Audrey thoughtfully expresses, her lasting influence will not be only through her films, but in her compassionate love for and campaign for the thousands, perhaps millions of children whose desperate need for aid she championed. Towards the end of her life, suffering from a rare cancer, Audrey said to her son, "Oh, I have had the most marvelous life, Shawnee." Her beautiful spirit shines throughout this marvelous book, throughout bitterness and sweetness. Intimate Audrey. Books. New fiction. 5 books to check out this month by Chris Hewitt. How big are the books of May? So big that one of them features 3 name brand authors for the price of one. That would be the latest from award-winning Francine Prose, whose novel 5 Weeks in the Country is about a real-life beef between 2 literary giants. Here are the titles we can't wait to get our hands on this month. The Calamity Club by Catherine Stockett. Stockett made readers wait 19 years for a follow-up to her blockbuster The Help, but what she lacks in speed she makes up for in heft. The Calamity Club is 656 pages long. Like The Help, it's set in Mississippi in the 20th century, and like The Help, it's about female strangers who bond despite their differences. This time they include a young resident of an orphanage who, during the Great Depression, becomes friends and forms the titular club with 2 women on the margins of society. One other similarity with The Help, a first-person narrator with a vivid, wisecracking voice. I arrived here at the orphanage 2 birthdays ago. Most folks just call it the orphan or else the old orphan, though I have yet to find where this new orphan is, and believe me, I've asked. Out now. We Are Mighty by Sharon McMahon. Subtitled 12 Ordinary Americans Who Did the Next Needed Thing. We Are Mighty works as a children's companion to the best-selling writer and historically popular The Small and the Mighty. Some of the dozen are not all that ordinary. The book opens with Gouverneur Morris, who wrote the preamble to the Constitution, but the fascinating bunch also includes a pair of lesser-known artists. A lighthouse keeper dubbed the bravest woman in America, Ida Lewis was credited with saving many lives, and Ida B. Lewis Burnett was trailblazing journalist, suffragist, and activist. Out May 19th.
Where is My Sister by Shannon Gilbert, illustrated by Hugh Van Lee. There are plenty of picture books that help children sort out their feelings when their parents bring home a new sibling. But Where is My Sister is about figuring out what to do when the baby doesn't come home. In Gilby's latest, young Salma and her brother, Gerald, are excited to welcome the new arrival and confused when their mom has to explain that the baby died and what that means. Out May 19th. 5 Weeks in the Country by Francine Prose. Hans Christian Andersen really did visit Charles Dickens at his British country estate in 1857, and the bickering Dickens family really did grow to hate Andersen over the course of what turned out to be a lengthy stay. Some details are known about his visit. Hans Andersen slept in this room for 5 weeks, which seemed to the family ages. Read a note Dickens pinned on a wall, but Prose, whose novels include Blue Angel and Lovers at the Chameleon Club, Paris, 1932, imagines what else happened between Andersen and Dickens' clan. Out now. The Tuxedo Society by Paul Rudnick. The latest from the playwright Jeffrey screenwriter from Sister Act and movie critic under the pseudonym Libby Gelman Wexner, is about a down-on-his-luck actor who's invited to a dinner that turns out to be a meeting of gay super spies. Soon he's drawn into a global conspiracy that involves a sketchy televangelist who, is true James Bond fashion, is bent on a world domination. Even without reading a word, this one has Jonathan Groff movie adaptation written all over it. Out May 26th. Taste. Restaurant notes. Downtown's Konbini is hard to define, but easy to love. Matthew Zayas flies with empty suitcases to visit family in the Dominican Republic. He fills the suitcases with coffee beans that were harvested on a farm about 5,000 feet above sea level and processed under the blazing Bahona sun. You're driving through these towns and literally people are just laying out coffee on the sidewalk and walking away, letting it dry. There's coffee everywhere. Back in Buffalo, he roasts the beans himself and sells the coffee by the cup at the new coffee bar, Vintage Coffee Raymond, which he opened with his partner, Chiara Maslow. The Dominican beans make a likable cup of coffee, not too strong, not too weak, not too watery, not thick. It's mild and balanced. The kind of coffee anybody can drink, Zayas says. Coffee is one part of their business. Their restaurant meets coffee shop, meets vintage clothing store, anchors an equally hodgepodge indoor mall in downtown Buffalo. Vintage Coffee Raymond faces Washington Street. You can spot it from the whiteboard easel sign advertising coffee in Raymond. Inside the building, their business occupies a few converted lawyers' offices, which feed into a wooden hallway that stretches down the length of the block. One office is the kitchen, another is the coffee bar, another is filled with records and will, once they get their beer and wine license, become a record listening room and bar. They also use some of the ball space for a few racks of vintage clothing, where embroidered shearling jackets and sweaters hang for sale. Whatever gets us excited is what we're doing, Zayas says. I don't think business needs to be one defined thing. Customers take their coffee, the Raymond on a girl go or eat at a few bistro chairs in the hallway. Zayas and Maslow hung string lights throughout the hallway, between a brick wall and their businesses. It's like eating in the shaded alley. They anchor one end of the indoor mall, the Lane on Main Street. The rest of the mall includes an illustration shop, a candle shop, and a couple of cosmetic services. At the end of the Lane, opening onto Main Street across from the Hyatt Regency, is a cozy bookstore, Evening House Books. The Raymond restaurant part of Vintage Coffee Raymond has another name, Konbini. Zayas and Maslow have been developing a reputation at Konbini for a very tight menu of Japanese favorites, especially the rare in Buffalo onigiri. Onigiri is a Japanese rice ball encased in dried seaweed and filled with things like pickled plum and sweet potato miso. Konbini makes miso or tonkatsu pork ramen and a brothless maizmen ramen with noodles that are sticky and moist from sesame oil. They're topped with a halo of fixings: cucumber, green onion, chili crisp, half of a marinated egg, and strips of dried seaweed. They mostly serve lunch to go or at their handful of bistro tables, but they take reservations for dinner service Thursday through Saturday evenings. The coffee comes in various methods and sizes. Drip coffee costs $3.45 to $3.60. Pourable is $5.50 to $6. Zayas and Maslow collaborate with the Lane on Maine's other businesses for markets and events. They recently posted a carousel of suggested food and book pairings from the bookstore. The pickled plum onigiri, sour, salty, and unusual, apparently pairs well with the Iranian novella, Women Without Men. They got a lot of business from travelers staying at the Hyatt or visiting the convention center. I love hearing what the conventions are about, Maslow said. They love downtown. They're proud to be a feature on downtown's face. To Zayas, who's from New York City, downtown Buffalo's just cool. Maslow grew up in the Elmwood Village and loves downtown's beautiful buildings. Any city that's trying to grow its urban center, there have to be people who are taking the risk to put themselves out there, do something different, and just take up space, Zayas said. We could say that we love downtown, but then what? How much do we love it? Let's open a business down there. Konbini on Washington Street is open from 11 to 3 Tuesday and Wednesday, 11 to 9 Thursday and Friday, and noon to 9 Saturday. The coffee shop, Vintage Coffee Raymond, opens earlier at 8 a.m. Tuesday through Friday. Book ahead online for dinner reservations. There's limited seating. Restaurant news. Lancaster will get its first Chipotle with a drive-through or a Chipotle lane. The cost of meat is crazy. Outside of Niagara Falls Deli this week, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer said it's time to break up the meat monopolies. Buffalo's bars or restaurants with Sabre Fever are capitalizing on the cool watch party trend. The Hamburg Mimosa Festival is from 10 to 2, May 16th in the village of Hamburg. The crawl begins with a melon mimosa at Desiderios, then a kiwi mimosa at Black Smoke Bourbon Bar, then a passion fruit mango mimosa at Blue Eyed Baker, and a strawberry rhubarb mimosa at Alchemy Wine and Beer. A vendor fair will be set up in the municipal parking lot between the businesses. Tickets are $37 and include 4 mimosas and vendor fair entry. The Lewis and Smelt Festival returns from 6 to 10 at the Griffin Brewery and Gastropub, South Water Street, Lewiston. Sample deep-fried smelt for $5. There will also be a raffle and live music. Say cheese. This southern classic is great as a dip or a spread and couldn't be simpler to make. Double duty. Puff pastry instantly elevates a pair of Mother's Day breakfast recipes. "40 years of American Girl doll." As the dolls hit a milestone, a look at their origin story and how they're being celebrated this year by Jim Higgins. American Girl dolls and books, which have connected girls to U.S. history for 40 years, were directly inspired by the era that gave birth to this nation. On a trip to the Living History Museum, Colonial Williamsburg in the 1980s, American Girl founder Pleasant Rowland saw that visiting children were fascinated with the clothing, tools, toys, and daily objects of the era, but she also noticed the gift shop sold mostly items for adults. So on a getaway weekend in northern Wisconsin, Rowland, a former teacher and textbook creator, sketched out a plan that included dolls and their accessories, books, and eventually a magazine, retail store, and stage show. When she sold her Wisconsin-based Pleasant Company in Mattel, Rowland and her team had achieved all of those goals. A new book, The Making of the American Girl, traces the American Girl story from Rowland's early brainstorms through the creation and release of the first 6 dolls, their associated books, and the opening of Chicago's American Girl Place, the retail store that became a destination for so many girls. The volume is rich in both text and visuals, including photographs, sketches, images of fabric swatches, and historical illustrations, including many samples of what directly inspired American Girl outfits, accessories, and stories. The first 3 dolls, Samantha, Kirsten, and Molly, and their books were launched in 1986. In addition to the making of book, Mattel is celebrating their 40th anniversary with the re-release of the first 6 and additional legacy dolls under the historic character banner. Stories grounded in historical detail. Rowland conceived of each doll as a girl growing up in a particular time and place. Unless otherwise noted, statements attributed to Rowland in this article come from the Making of book. The original 3 were Samantha Parkington, an orphan living with her well-off grandmother in a small town in 1904. Kirsten Larson, a Swedish immigrant in the Minnesota Territory in 1854, and Molly McIntyre, who waits with her family for their father to return home from World War II in a suburb modeled on Evanstown, Illinois. Each character has an arc of 6 books that included an introductory story, a school story, and a Christmas story. Author Valerie Tripp and colleagues wanted girls reading the books to be able to compare the characters' experiences in different eras. Stressing historical accuracy, Rowland directed that clothing and accessories be based on reliable sources from museums, period media, or experts' descriptions. Even the body shape of story characters had to be historically based. Making of excerpts a memo from an editor to an art director of the Samantha books, recommending the illustrator look at corset ads and dress pattern sketches to see the body lines of 1904. The first American Girl catalog was mailed to 500,000 homes in September 1986. When the company's initial holiday season was complete, it posted more than $1 million in sales. Over the company's first 2 decades, Samantha was the most popular doll, according to the Making of American Girl book edition editor Jody Goldberg and her team. After several possible reasons for her success, her feminine outfits, replete with ribbons and bows, her signature color, burgundy, which was also the company color, her doll's appearance and the corporate logo, and her spunky personality and willingness to defy expectations. Finding the girl in history. Rowland called the process of creating these stories Finding the Girl in History. That proved to be challenging, with Felicity Merriman, whose adventures take place in 1774, in the tense months before American independence. It was difficult to find work written by or about children during the colonial time period, but happily Tripp came upon the journal of Philip Vickers Fithin, who tutored children in the Virginia colony during this time. His journal became a key resource. Felicity's family are patriots who ultimately support independence, while her friend Elizabeth and other acquaintances are loyal to the English king, a situation that led to stories about disagreeing with people you love and vice versa. But her stories are not only about politics. Felicity is a horse girl who adores Penny, whose name is short for independence. The active Felicity also hates the feeling of her stays being too tight. A caption in Making of explains how the undergarment she wore gave her gown the shape considered stylish. But this resourceful girl also wore an embroidered pocket under her dresses, which all had slits so she could reach into the pocket. Creating and revising stories about girls of color. Felicity's stories included the characters Rose and Marcus, enslaved black people who work in the Merriman home and store, and Isaac, a free black man in the militia, who's still hemmed in by many restrictions. The developed Addie Walker, American Girl's first black doll, whose story begins in 1864. The company assembled an advisory board of black scholars, including Lonnie Bunch, founding director of the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture. To write Addie's stories, American Girl selected Connie Porter. Her debut novel for adults, Albright Court, impressed the company for expressing hope despite challenging circumstances. Released in 1993, Addie's arc begins in slavery and includes both escape and family separation. Likely, American Girl convened an advisory board of Hispanic and Southwestern scholars for Josefina Montoya, released in 1997, whose character lives in New Mexico in 1824 when it's still part of Mexico. American Girl has revised and updated stories about its characters of color for depth, accuracy, and sensitivity. In 2024, it began releasing Addie's stories with updates that reflected new scholarship and with online conversation guides for discussion between girls and adults about slavery. In 2025, it re-released Christian Yearns a Lesson, which changes to the representation of Kristen's indigenous friend, Singing Bird, also adding a glossary of Dakotas for words. And for faithful readers of American Girl books who may have imagined what the lives of the girls as adults would be like, Mattel is publishing the first American Girl novel for adults in October. Samantha, the next chapter, written by best-selling historical novelist Fiona Davis, picks up Samantha Parkinson's story as a 25-year-old woman in New York City, circa 1920. You have been listening or reading of articles and features from the May 10th issue of the Sunday Gusto. Your reader has been Michelle. Thank you for listening.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have the front section of the Sunday Times. At 2 o'clock, we have the New York Times Opinion section. And at 3 o'clock, we have the New York Times Arts and Leisure section. Stay with us for these readings and more throughout the day. If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you. You're listening to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. As of this year, our agency has broadcast more than 300,000 hours of radio readings. Volunteer radio readers read newspapers, magazines, and books to area people who are blind or have a print disability, who are provided reading radios. Radio Reading's broadcast signal is provided at no charge by WNED. Radio Reading broadcasts from studios at 1199 Harlem Road in suburban Buffalo. Please let others know about Radio Reading. It's your service. For more information on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, call 716-821-5555. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability, which makes reading, holding a book,